Yeah, so our next step in solving quadratics by factoring, not in standard form, we're going to look at those. So given the function, f of x equals negative 7x plus 28x minus 20. So you have a quadratic function and solve the following. So when is it equal to 0? Right, so it's equal to 0. So you're going to find out when is this equation equal to 0. So we're going to solve it. So first thing that we did, remember before, we divide it, right? So if you have a common factor and we can divide it by negative 7, if they all have a common factor, we can divide it by negative 7. Again, if we do that, then we have a new equation, x squared plus negative 4x plus 3 equals 0. If we divide everything by negative 7, then once we have that, now we know that a is a 1 here, so it'll be easier to factor. And now we can use the x factor method, right? X factor, right? Our c goes on the top, our b goes on the bottom. And you find two factors that multiply to 3, add to negative 4. So we go through our factors, right? So we got like negative 1, negative 3. That works. All the other ones don't work. So negative 1 times negative 3. Negative 1 times negative 3 is multiplied to 3, add to negative 4. So our factored form, using our x factor method with our x's, x, and our two numbers are going to be negative 1 and negative 3. So that's our factored form. Then we're going to solve our factored form, right? So we're going to let each factor or each parentheses equal to 0 so that we can use a zero product property. And we're going to solve it, right? So plus 1 to both sides. We get x equals 1. This one, add 3 to both sides. X equals 3. Okay, so our steps to solve these type of equations is, right, divide by common factor if possible. Right, then our next step, once we divide by common factor, we use x factor. We use x factor method, right, to get our two parentheses. Then we use our zero product property to solve. All right, so we divide by the common factor, use the x factor method, and then we use the zero product property to solve. Okay, and we notice here, to solve these type of problems, this side, the right side, or one of the sides, is always equal to 0. Always equal to 0. So we factor it and use zero product property. That's very important. So it has to be equal to 0 in order to solve it in this method. And to apply this, why are we doing this, right? So these are our zeros because it's equal to 0. So the equation is equal to 0. So our answers is going to be our zeros. Right? So remember, these are our zeros. And they're also the x-intercepts. Right? So zeros, they're x-intercepts. So at 1, there's 1. And at 3, these are the intercepts for our graph. And since our a is negative, right, we have negative 7 in the front. It's going to be opening down. So our graph should look something like that, going through our x-intercepts. You know, what if we have the same equation, negative 7x plus 28x minus 21, and instead of equal to 0, they say, okay, what if it's equal to 7? What would be the x value? If your equation was equal to 7 instead of 0. So there's a difference, right? So the top one equal to 0. This one's equal to 7. It's a different answer. So what our answer is going to be is not our zeros, because it's not equal to 0. Right? So like that, we must make it equal to 0 in order to solve it by factoring. Right? So how do you get rid of that 7? Alright, so to get rid of that 7, subtract it. So subtract 7 to both sides, then rewrite our equation, negative 7x squared plus 28x minus 28 now equals 0, because that cancels out. Okay, so now it's equal to 0, and now we can factor it. Okay, so subtract 7 to make the right side 0. And that's important, so we can factor it and solve it by factoring. Okay, then we're going to solve. So now we can get rid of the common factor if we can. So negative 7. And this one works out perfect. That we can divide everything by negative 7. Then rewrite what we have. So x squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0 now. All right, so we divide by common factor. Okay, then we're going to use the x factor. So use the x factor method. And here's our x. So we have 4 on the top, negative 4 on the bottom. Two factors multiply to 4, add to negative 4. So we negative 2. It's going to be negative 2 and negative 2. So our two factors are going to be x, x. With our two numbers in there, it'll be negative 2, negative 2. And this is still equal to 0. And now we got the zero product property, right? So use the zero product property. So zero product property. So each one, set it to 0. Right there, right there. So we got x minus 2 equal to 0. And these are both the same, so we should have the same answer. So we add 2, so x equals 2. Right there. This is going to be x equals 2 also. So we just have 1. We don't have to repeat ourselves. So x equals 2 is our answer. So we don't need this part. So we got one answer for this one. Okay, so how can that be applied, right? So x equals 2. This is not our 0. Okay, not our 0. The reason why, because our equation was not equal to 0 in the beginning. Right, because it says when is it 7, and why does this matter, right? Okay, so on our graph, we write out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 right here, and then matches up with our height 7. And if you notice, the x value for that 7 is 2. And that's how we got our 2. Right there. Okay, so when x equals 2, our height is 7. Right? When x equals 2, our height is 7. So that's a little difference of it. When it's equal to 0, in the beginning, right, equal to 0, that gives us when the height is 0. We got two answers, 1 and 3. When the height is 0, these two. When it says equal to 7, it means when its height is at 7. So when height is at 7 and then you solve it, you get 2 is your x value, so like your time. So again, if we want to apply this, if we had a person right here kicking a soccer ball off the ground at 1 second, so at 1 second it goes up, and then after 2 seconds in the air it gets a height of 7, and then it comes down and touches the ground at 0 at height at 3 seconds. Okay, so again, a little difference, right? If it's 0, that gives you your zeros. If it's equal to some other number, like 7, it's talking about when is this equation at height 7. And this one is 2 seconds. Okay, so that's a little difference of those two. But in order to solve it, we have to make it equal to 0 so that we can solve by factoring and do it that way. Okay, so 0 is very powerful. We want the right side always to be 0 So that makes it a lot easier to solve. And we can do different methods to solve. This is one of them. Solve by factoring. Okay, so let's do a couple examples. So first one, so you have equation equal to 5, right? We want the right side to be 0. So we're just going to subtract whatever's on the right. So subtract 5 to both sides. To cancel that out, rewrite what we know. So we get x squared minus 15x and 61 minus 5, positive 56 equals 0. And then we can solve by factoring. And that was pretty straightforward, right? So we have our x, we're going to use 56 on the top, negative 15 on the bottom, and then our two factors, multiply to 56, add to negative 15, so it'll be negative 7, negative 8. Then we rewrite that in parentheses. So here's our x, and our two values is negative 7, negative 8, and now we can solve that by using the zero product property. Right, set each one to 0. And we automatically can see when you add 7 to both sides, this is going to be 7. Add 8 to both sides, this one's going to be 8. Right there. So those are our two answers, 7 and 8. Okay, so all your steps should look just like this. Set it up that way. Okay, let's do number 2. Okay, number 2. Now they have a 7n on the right. Doesn't matter what's on the right. You want to get rid of it. Subtract it. If it's a negative, you add it. Right? Just get rid of that. So you subtract 7n to both sides. And you notice we're only going to do like terms. So subtract 7n to your other n's on the left. Then rewrite it. So we got n squared. 18n minus 7n to be 11n plus 28. N's cancel, so equal to 0. So now it's equal to 0. We can solve that, right? So we do our x factor. Right, so we make our x, 28 on the top, 11 on the bottom. Two factors multiply 28. Say we don't know it. 2 times 14. It's not 11. 4 and 7. That works, right? 4 times 7, 28. 4 plus 7 equals 11. So our two numbers will be 4 and 7. I'm going to write that in our factored form. Equal to 0. Now we're using n. And we put our two numbers in there. So you have plus 4 plus 7. And then we solve each one by setting it to 0, right? N plus 4 equals 0. N plus 7 equals 0. Solve it, we should get n equals negative 4, n equals negative 4, and n equals negative 7. Okay, let's look at number 8. Okay, when we look at number 8, there's two things on the right. Same method, we want the right side to be 0, so you have to get rid of both of them. Alright, so we subtract 2a to both sides, subtract 2a to the a's on the left. Then we're going to subtract this 2a squared. Subtract 2a squared. We subtract that, so now it's going to cancel. And now we rewrite what we have. So 8a squared minus 2a squared is going to be 6a squared. Negative 16a minus 2a is negative 18a. And then we still got that negative 240 equal to 0. Forgot the a. Okay, now we have equation. Get rid of the common factor, right? So you have 6 in the front. See if we can divide by 6. And we can, because everything is a factor of 6. So then rewrite what we have left. So a squared minus 3a. 24 divided by 6, right? 4. So it's 40 equals 0. And now we can solve by factoring. Same method, right? C's on the top, B's on the bottom. Solve it, factors of negative 40, add to negative 3. So we got like 2 times negative 20. That's too far. 4 times negative 10. No, that's too far. About 5 times Negative 8. Yes, that works. All right, so 5, negative 8, because it adds to negative 3, multiply negative 40. So our factored form, it's going to write that, equals 0. So it's going to be A. And our two numbers are going to be 5 and negative 8. And now we can solve that by setting them both to 0. Right? A plus 5 equals 0. A minus 8 equals 0. When we solve it, minus 5 both sides, A equals negative 5. Add 8 to both sides, A equals 8. So our two answers are negative 5 and positive 8. Okay, so again, whatever's on the right, get rid of it, subtract it to the left, and use common terms, right? Squareds, A's or singles by together, constants stay together.